Hey, come on in. So, I heard that you needed some help picking out some ties. Okay, good. Well, we can definitely help with that. So, what I've done is I've arranged to show you some ties that hopefully will help you make some good decisions about tie purchases, and hopefully, maybe you'll even like a few that you'll want to buy today. Okay? Good. Okay. Well, I thought we'd start out with some casual ties and work our way up in formality to more So I thought we'd start out with some informal ties and then work our way up to more formal ones. Does that sound good? Okay. Well, let me get the first one out here. We're going to start very basic. This is a cotton tie made from just basic cotton material. And it is also in a very simple, pretty much one tone solid. Not much of a pattern. You can see there's a little bit here of flecks of red, and there's some yellow here, and I think there's even some green, but for the most part, if you were to stand back, this would look like a solid blue tie. Not until you got close to it would you see that it had some sort of texture or pattern to it. So this is a pretty basic kind of starter beginner tie, easy to match with your outfits. It would go well with a brown suit as well as a gray suit. You usually do not want to match your tie too closely to the color of the suit that you're wearing. It can also be obviously worn with just a shirt. Now, there are many schools of thought out there. Most people believe that you can wear a tie and a shirt and be fine. There are other people who believe that the level of formality starts with a nice dress shirt. The next thing you add would be a sports coat or an odd jacket. And then the next step after that would be a tie. So while they would think it would be proper to wear a sports coat or a suit without a tie, it would not be proper to wear a tie without a suit. But that's kind of quibbling on things. Obviously, people wear shirt and ties all the time, and so that's fine, not a problem. But just to let you know that some people may talk to you and object to wearing a tie and just a shirt without a suit coat. But those are only for super formal occasions. You certainly wouldn't show up to any sort of semi-formal event in just a shirt and a tie. You would have a jacket. So let's move up one step. This is still cotton, and this time the material is called Seersucker. It is a type of cotton cloth that has a bit of a texture to it. It's kind of got a bumpy, wrinkly sort of finish onto the cloth. They also make suits out of seersucker. They are mostly worn in the summer. So this tie would be a summer tie, especially in the South. It would be not necessarily appropriate to wear it in the winter because it is much more of a summer color, summer pattern. This is a gray and white, small striped pattern, as is all seersucker, either blue or gray. Sometimes you'll even see green and red in seersucker, but they all have this striped pattern, and they all have this slightly bumpy, wrinkly texture to the cloth. So a great informal tie. You would not wear this with a seersucker jacket. I think that would be too much. Because the other thing you want to keep in mind is you do not want to match the pattern in your suit coat, if it has one, with your tie. Your tie should always be in contrast to your suit, both in color and in texture. So that is one step up. So now we'll move on to necktie. This one, you'll notice, has a little bit more complex pattern. This is a plaid with a kind of broken dashed line on part of it, with predominant colors being blue and white, with some red and then kind of a greenish gray element to it as well. So this is fairly versatile. You should be able to pick up the color of one of your other pieces of clothing in this tie without a problem. Again, this is cotton, and it is not that expensive of a tie, and that's one of the things you'll find. These ties I've showed you so far are rather inexpensive, and you can still get some very nice patterns and ties and not have to spend a ton of money, especially for a cotton tie. But again, this is for a casual event, or to wear to work if you needed to wear ties at the place you work at. This would be great with perhaps a blue pair of pants and a white shirt. Very basic, but it has a little bit of character to it. Then the next tie is again a cotton tie. A little bit of a step up as far as the finish of this tie, but it is still cotton. Again, a nice plaid, fairly large in this case. This has purple and green, kind of a light blue, and then a dark blue being the predominant colors. So this works really well with a predominantly blue outfit because the colors of the tie really contrast well and go well with a dark blue, and the dark blue in the tie ties in to the rest of the outfit. You'll also notice, let me bring out the tie we just talked about, that this tie is a little bit wider, but not by much. And this is basically kind of the range that you want to be in for the width of your ties. You may go a little bit wider, but I really wouldn't go any skinnier than this tie unless you had a specific coat that had very thin lapels, or you were buying a tie for someone who was of a more slender frame, maybe a bit shorter, and their shoulders were not as wide. A skinnier tie would be in better proportion to their bodies. So a lot of it has to do with the width of the shoulders, as well as the width of the lapels on the suit that you might be wearing it with. But if you're just wearing it by itself with a shirt, I would go with the width of the shoulders. So you wouldn't want to have someone who was small framed wearing a really wide tie. And then the same thing, you wouldn't want to have a very large, wide person wearing a skinny tie. Not necessarily even fat, just broad-shouldered. So it's always good to kind of take your cues from the environment that the tie is going to be worn in and pick your width on that. But for the average man, this would be a perfectly acceptable width. So now we're going to move on. We're going to step up just a little bit to another tie. This tie is a combination, and it has some cotton in it, but it also has some wool in it as well. So the finish is a little different. It doesn't quite feel as if it were cotton. It has a little bit of a rougher texture that you would expect from something that was made out of wool. So again, kind of a plaid. This is quite somber, almost monotone with a gray and a dark blue. Everything's kind of in the cool family. So this is a tie that kind of melds into the background of a suit. It does not carry the weight of an outfit, which was sometimes very appropriate for something that is a little more somber or a little more formal. This type of tie would be perfect for that because while it has a pattern, it's not going to dominate anything. So it works well and is actually probably a little bit easier to work with as far as matching than a tie that would have a loud pattern or a bright pattern to it. So again, gray suit, blue pants, or if you were having a brown suit, would look good with this as well. So now we're going to move on to silk ties. That's traditionally been the type of tie that most people think about when they think about a tie, and that is silk. Here we have another plaid pattern. I tend to gravitate toward plaid patterns. I think they offer a very nice visual on a tie with the shape of the tie and the interaction of the diagonal lines with the tie and with the lapels of a suit that you may be wearing them with. I think a well laid out, well designed plaid really looks well, looks sharp, and does not look gimmicky. You want to stay away from printed ties, particularly. All of these ties that you will see are woven ties. The pattern is actually created by the way the threads are woven into the material, and then the material is folded into the tie shape. You can buy printed ties where the tie material is basically one color and then the pattern is printed or stamped on them. Those are usually ties of a much bolder and brighter type of pattern and usually not appropriate for any type of formal event or even a business event. Almost more of a joke type of tie, something you might wear to a fun event, maybe a barbecue or something if you wanted to have a conversation piece. But most of your ties, or all of your ties that you're going to wear in any kind of business setting, or particularly any kind of semi-formal or formal setting, should be woven. And that will add to the durability and certainly the tastefulness of the ties. You'll notice that these patterns are large, this plaid pattern. As you move up in formality, you usually also move down in the size of the pattern. And so the last ties we will show you will actually have very small patterns because they will be the more formal. So the next is going to be a series of 3 that are, again, a plaid pattern, all very similar. Get these out here. These are silk. They are kind of at the maximum width that I would suggest for a tie, unless, again, you are particularly broad-shouldered or have a particularly large frame. So this is the same pattern, just with a variation in the coloring of that pattern. I think these are a nice balance between a bright, colorful tie with a nice pattern and it's not too big. It's not too attention-getting, but yet it definitely carries a lot of weight in the outfit that you are wearing it with. So you would want to be careful if you were matching this with a suit coat or a shirt that had a lot of pattern on it. The shirt you would want to wear this with would either be solid or have a very small pattern. You wouldn't want to match this size of pattern. And it's, again, the same with the suit coat. A pattern that was subdued or not there at all, maybe very thin, like small pattern tweed or something like that. So these three are kind of a set. They were sold, obviously, at the same time, and I feel that they are quite versatile in the types of suits you can wear them with. So let me roll these up, move these over here, out of the way. And I actually have another tie. It is very similar in its pattern, slightly different. This is more of a red, white, and blue patriotic type of tie. Again, the angles of the plaid matching very well with the shape and dimensions of the tie in the suit. So, serving a very similar purpose to the last three that we saw. So now we will move on to a tie that's a little wider. This is kind of an older tie in our collection. But it has some really, really nice coloring with it. It has this olive green and this maroon, burgundy type color, and then a dark blue and a cream off-white, and then a kind of warm gray. This is very, very versatile type of tie. You can wear this with a lot of different outfits, and it holds up very well. Even though it is kind of a busy pattern, it is not a loud pattern as far as colors. The colors are quite subdued, and I find myself coming back to this tie over and over again, even though it is an older tie and a little bit wider than most of the other patterns that you've seen. But interestingly enough, if you look here, it narrows quite significantly down very quickly in its width. Let me move this over like this so you can see. So we start out with a width like this and very quickly move down to a width like that in a very short space, which makes it a little difficult to tie. You have to have the right length of body, or else you end up with a very, very small knot in a very wide tie, which can look strange. So this is not necessarily for everybody as far as the shape of the tie, but the pattern is very nice and very well done. So the next type of tie we're going to look at, again, we are staying with silk. Now this has a very different texture than you would expect from silk. But this is a striped tie, or some people call it a rep tie, and that comes from England. When you belonged to a certain school or a certain club that had certain colors, you would wear ties, sometimes exclusively wear ties, that included those colors. And they were almost always striped like this in some way. I don't know if this represents anything in particular as far as the colors, but this is a very nice, bright, happy tie that is almost nautical in its color theme. We have the white background as the predominant, and we have these small stripes of dark blue and gold. This is a tie that is kind of formal as far as the color scheme, but yet is very bright and cheerful. Here we have another rep tie. This is much more traditional rep tie. Again, in red and white and blue. Silk of a nice width. The predominant red color is really bold in this, and so it stands up well to a blue suit, because you have just a little bit of blue to tie it in. But it goes really, really well with a dark blue sports jacket or suit coat. So you will see a lot of these type of ties in all different types of colors. Again, the angle, similar to the plaid, working very well with the shape of the tie and the lapels of the suit jacket you'll be wearing it with. Then we have another pattern. You'll see small polka dot. And these last three ties I will show you will be having much smaller patterns to them. This is a more formal in the fact that it has a smaller pattern, but it is polka dot, so it is kind of fun. And I think it strikes a good balance between just a solid blue tie or something with a little bit different small pattern, in that you could easily wear this with a suit to a semi-formal or even formal occasion, and it would hold up very well. And the polka dots are there, but they're not screaming and they're not huge. And again, forming a nice geometrical pattern that works well with the shape of the tie. This next tie is something that it's one of those essentials that every person should have in their wardrobe, and that is a basic black tie to go along with a basic dark suit for any sort of occasion, such as a funeral, where you would need a somber outfit. And so this tie is solid black, but it has printed on it a pattern of flower shapes, and or almost like cotton plant shapes, with some vines and leaves interacting with those shapes. So it's not something that screams at you across the room, but if you're talking to someone and you're wearing it, they can see it has a little bit of a pattern to it. So it's not as plain and boring as just a solid black tie. So a nice nod to pattern and style, at the same time respectfully somber. So an important tie to have in your collection. And then this final one is a much more formal tie. This will hold up very well with any type of suit. You could also wear it by itself if you wanted to, but this tie was made to be worn with a suit. It has a very small pattern of paisleys and flowers, and is very substantial and of a much higher quality than the other ties that I've showed you. So this is the kind of top end, well, not the top end, but nearing the more expensive end of ties. You can certainly get more expensive than this, but this is your basic kind of high-end business tie or formal suit tie that you would wear. It may be a little bit too informal to wear with just a suit, with just a pants and shirt. So I hope that this has helped you kind of understand the different types of ties that are available. You can go from very small patterns in very subdued color schemes, all the way to much more bold patterns and much more energetic, colorful themes to the tie. So it's always good to have a variety so that you're not stuck wearing the same thing all the time. And it also gives you more versatility in changing an outfit because it's much easier to have multiple ties than to have multiple suits or suit jackets. So let me know what you think, and why don't you take a look around and see some of the other patterns we have, and then get back to me. Okay? Very good. Thanks.